Hello and welcome to the course. My name is Pablo Farias Navarro and I'll be your instructor. Have you ever wanted to make games? If the answer is yes, then this course is for you. You'll be creating a simple 2D platformer game, and what makes this course unique is that no coding experience is required to build this game, because we'll be using Unity Playground, a framework that runs on Unity, which makes it extremely easy for anyone to create simple 2D games and experiences by dragging and dropping coding blocks. We'll cover game mechanics including player movement and jumping, enemies that wander around which you have to avoid, collectibles that increase your score, dialogues so that some friendly characters can give you tips on how to win, and a basic user interface including game over and winning conditions. In order to get started, head over to unity.com and download and install Unity. So if you go to their main website, just click where it says Get Started and you'll see guided instructions on how to download Unity. In particular, if you go directly to store.unity.com/download, that's going to allow you to skip a few steps and download the Unity Hub. Once you have that up and running, it will run on either Windows or Mac. We are ready to get started with the creation of the game. Thank you for watching this video. I'm super excited to checking out the games that you will be creating. Welcome back everyone. Let's start by opening the Unity Hub. And once you've got that open, go to Projects and then click on New. I'm going to select 2D type of project and give my project a name. And then click on Create. This will open up the Unity editor. Alright, so now that Unity is ready, we need to go and download Unity Playground, which is what will allow us to build these really simple 2D games, and that will be possible even if you've never used Unity or done any kind of coding before. So let's go to Window and select Asset Store. In the search bar here, we're going to write Unity Playground. And that should bring up the package that we are looking for, which is this one here. So click on it and then press the button here to include it in your project. There might be a prompt here asking you whether you're sure that you want to bring this project in, and we're going to say that yes. So this will now download and add all the files. If you see this window about the package manager needing to be updated, just click Install Upgrade. That's all good. This process might take a few seconds depending on your internet connection and your computer. When the download ends, you will see this window asking you whether you want to import all of these files, and you just have to click Import here to confirm. This could also take a few seconds. Now that Playground is installed in our project, we can go and check some of the sample games that come with it, and that will also allow you to get familiar with some basics of Unity. I'm going to close this Asset Store tab here, so I'm going to right click and click on Close Tab. And now I'm going to make this area here grow a little bit. This is the project area. This is where all the files are located. And I'm going to expand this examples folder. So we're going to find any of these games here, and please do go and try them all so that you can get an idea of the type of games that we can build. So I'm going to click on the first one that says Adventure. And then I'm going to click on the file that has the Unity logo, which is a file called, in this case, Adventure. And as you can see down here, this is a file called adventure.unity, and that is a scene, a Unity scene. Think of a Unity scene as a whole self-contained level or unit of a game. So if we open this, we will have this mini game shown here. And what we have here, this is called the scene view. This is where all of the game characters and game objects are located. So I can click on some of these, and you might already see some elements around it, which might allow you to increase its size, or potentially you could have the one to move it around. So all of that is possible from here. This is where you actually design your game. And then there's this tab here that says the game, and that is what you see when you play the game. Now, personally, I like to have both the scene view and the game view visible at the same time. So I'm going to grab, in this case, the game view, and I'm going to move it all the way here so that I can have both things at the same time. And in fact, you can rearrange all of these tabs in whichever way you want. And if for any particular reason you make a mistake, let's say that you close this and you don't know how to get it back, that's perfectly fine. All you have to do is go back to Window, layouts, and then just go back to the default layout. So don't be afraid to explore and drag things around. So I'm going to do this thing again here. And now lastly, for this particular lesson, if we want to play this game, I'm going to press the play button up here. If I press play, we're going to see that the game will start here on the game view. And this particular game is controlled with the A, W, S, D keys on my keyboard, so I can move this character around. And I think the goal of this particular game is to collect all of the stars that are in the level. That increases my score. If I run into the bees, I lose health, and eventually I will hit game over if you lose all of your health. If you want to stop the game, just press the play button again, and you are back to your outside of game mode. And so you can play the game again if you want. So as a challenge for this lesson, try to follow along up to this point and go to examples and play all the different games. Well, that is all for this lesson, and in the very next lesson we are gonna get started building our game. Welcome back everyone. I'm super excited about this lesson because we'll get started with our game. If you explored the sample projects, you might have noticed that all of the games live in their own scene. For example, the adventure game lives in the adventure.unity scene, so we had to double click this to open it up. The first thing we need to do then for our game, for our new game, is to create a new scene for our platformer game. So I'm gonna go here in the project panel, which is where all the files live, and click on the scenes folder. Let's right click here, select create, and then select scene. Let's give this a name, platformer game. To open that new scene up, just simply double click on it. As you can see, this is a completely new scene, and that means that we don't really have anything to play with. Let's go and add something. Let's go and add a background. The good thing about Unity Playground is that it comes with a lot of files that can help us get started. So if you go here in the project panel and open the images folder, you will see a subfolder called background. So open that up, and you have 3 backgrounds here to choose from. Pick whichever you like the best. I'm gonna pick this one in the middle and drag it onto my scene view. The scene view is where you actually build and design your game, where you move different objects around in this manner. And then we also have the hierarchy, which shows all of the game objects that are present in our game. So you can see that there are 2 game objects right now. There is the main camera, which is what shows the player what's happening in the game. This camera will eventually follow the player around as you move. And we also have this background. If you want to rename any of them, you can right click on them and just select rename here. So we can call this background, for example. It's good to always save your progress, and you can do that by going to File, Save. And if I select any of these elements, regardless of whether it's here in the hierarchy or whether it's in the scene view, I should be seeing some options here in the inspector. If you have Playground installed and enabled, you will see a simplified version, which is what we're seeing now on the screen, because normally there are a lot more options here. If you are seeing a lot more options than what I'm seeing, it could be that Playgrounds is not enabled on your project. In order to enable Playground, just make sure to go here on the top menu and click on Playground and turn Playground on, and that will simplify this view. You might need to click somewhere else and then click back on the object to see the simplified version. Great, so our background, we can see that it's square, and we can see that there's an area here in our game view where there's no background. So it would be nice if we could just stretch this background all around, and you can actually do that if you select the up here. You will see this either the rect tool or the scale tool will allow you to do that, but you'll quickly realize that distorts the image, so it doesn't look as nice anymore if we do that. So there is a better way. So I'm gonna release the mouse here, and to go back to where we were before, we have to press either Control Z or Command Z on the Mac, Control Z on Windows, and that will undo what we just did. So what we want is to select the background and then go here and find some options. We have this sprite render component, which tells it how to draw. And if you select in draw mode, here it's a simple. If you change that to tiled, it will now automatically repeat itself if you expand it on any direction. I'm going to use the mouse wheel to zoom out of the scene view, and I can give this a much larger size. So if our player moves around, we are now going to be able to have some more background, and you can make this as big as you want. So go ahead and play with this with the different backgrounds and resize them. Lastly, when you select the background here, there's also invisibility options. Where it's a sorting layer, we want to select background, because every object that we add to the game, enemies, coins or stars, the player, everything needs to be drawn on top of the background, because if something's behind the background, we're not going to be able to see it. So by telling Unity that this is a background, it will make sure that this is always put behind everything else. Well, that is all for this lesson. Go ahead and play with the background, and in the next lesson we are going to make further progress in our game. Welcome back everyone. In this lesson we're going to add a player to our game. So let's go to the project panel and expand the images folder, and then go to creatures. You'll see a lot of options here for our player. Choose whichever creature you like the most. I'm going to pick this robot and drag it onto my scene view. I want to show you some of the options available to modify the player in different ways. Some of these tools that we have up here. So the first tool is the hand tool, and if you select that, you are able to just move around the scene view. You can also do that if you use the wheel button on your mouse, if you have that. So you're not really making any changes, you're just moving around. And of course you can zoom in and out using the mouse wheel as well. Then we have the move tool. If you select that and then select your robot, your player, you're going to be able to move the robot by clicking on this rectangle that's in the middle. And also you're able to move it in one direction. For example, this moves it in the X direction and this moves it in the Y direction. And as you change the location of your player, you're going to see that the position here is also changing. So pay attention to that particular part, how if there's one particular location that you like, you can see what the coordinates are for that location. Then we have a tool here to rotate the player. So if you select that, you see these circles. If you select any of those circles, you're able to rotate your player. If you want to go back and undo these changes, if you're on Windows, press Ctrl Z. If you are on a Mac, press Command Z. And that will restore it back to its original rotation or position. Then we have the scaling tool, which allows you to change the size of your characters, of your game objects. And you will see those numbers being reflected here. A scale of 1, you can change them directly like so. A scale of 1 means that we're not modifying the scale. And actually I want my player to be a little bit smaller, so I'm going to select a scale of 0.8 on both directions. Lastly, we have the rect tool, which allows you to both move it around and also change the size of your player. If you've played any platformer games, you will know that characters in the game should be affected by gravity. So we want our player to fall with gravity. And for that, we're going to select our player, and then we're going to go to Add Component here and search for a component called Rigid Body 2D, which by adding this, there's going to be basic physics simulation in our character. So now that we've added that, if we press play and start our game, you'll see that the player falls to the ground. Our player doesn't know it's a player, it only knows it's an image with gravity and some physics. So we need to be adding one thing at a time. Now, we don't want our player to fall off forever. We need to add some ground. To add some ground, let's go to Images here again and go to Blocks and select any of the blocks that you see here. Pick whichever one you like the best. I'm going to pick the bricks one and drag it onto my scene view, like so. What happens if I press play now? Let's go and see. Our player falls through the ground because the player doesn't know that it needs to stop here. For that, we need to add collision detection. And that means we need to add something called a collider to both the player and the block. So let's start with the block. Let's go here and click Add Component and select Box Collider 2D. Because this is a square shape, we're going to use the Box Collider 2D. And now if we select the player, you can select it either here or in the hierarchy. We need to go to Add Component, and the player, we could also give it a Box Collider, but we're going to give it one that's called the Capsule Collider, because that one works a little bit better when you have characters that are moving around in Unity. With the Box Collider, it could happen that our player might get stuck once we have more elements here, so we're going to add the Capsule Collider. What happens if I press play now? You can see that our player now gets stopped by the ground. So that's great. That's working the way it should. Well, that is all for this lesson. We're going to continue our game in the next video. Welcome back, everyone. In this lesson, we're going to implement player movement, so you'll be able to control your character and jump in your level. Let's start by selecting our player, and I'm actually going to rename it to player, because different people might be seeing different names there if you selected the orc or some of the other characters. And I also want to make my player a bit smaller, so I'm going to click on the scale area here and just enter 0.4, so it's going to be a smaller player. Now, to control our player, we need to add an additional component to our player. So let's click on Add Component and search for one that is called Move with Arrows. As the name suggests, this will let us control the player with the arrow keys. So first option here, type of control. You have two options, the arrow keys or WASD keys in your keyboard. I prefer the arrow keys, so I'm going to select that one. And I also only want my player to move to the sides. So I don't want it to move up and down in this with the arrow keys. So I'm going to select here just horizontal movement. You can also change the speed of the movement. So you can try one speed and see if it's too slow or too fast, and then you can adjust it until it feels right. So let's now press play and click here on the game view. And if I move my arrow keys, I can see that the player moves, but as you saw, it's rotating, and that is not what we wanted. The way to fix that is by clicking on your player and then going here to rigid body, and where it says constraints, we actually want to freeze rotation. We don't want our player to be rotating around as if it was a ball. So by freezing rotation, if we press play again, now we should be able to move it to the sides the way we want. But it's definitely moving a little bit too fast, so you might need to adjust that speed value. Let's set it as 1 for now. In game development, it's quite common that you have to enter certain numbers, for example, speed or strength or things like that. And it's hard to know in advance if it's going to be too fast or too slow. So what I always like to do is just enter any number, and then if it's too fast, you can reduce it. If it's too slow, you can increase it. Because you're never going to know in advance exactly what the number should be. You figure it out by trial and error. Great, so we have our character now, and we can move to the sides. So let's go and add a few more of these blocks. What you can do is, if you select the block and you right click here, you can click on duplicate, and that will create an additional block. And then by using the moving tool, you can move that block around like so. Let's undo to go back to the original position there. If you want block to move in, because it's really hard to make it match exactly like where the two should meet, it can take quite a while, even if you have a really good pulse. The way to move it in a fixed step is by keeping the key Control or Command on the Mac pressed, and then it will move in more fixed steps, and it will be much easier for you to make it match the position. So that's what I'm doing here. You can also duplicate instead of right-clicking and selecting duplicate. You can also just press the Control D or Command D, and then you can duplicate it much quicker. So it's easy to go and add a few more of these. So go ahead and add some more blocks to your level. But what I want to implement now is jumping. So let's click on our character again and add an additional component here, which is called jump. So if you add that component, you can select which key is going to make it jump. So I want it to be to jump with space bar, and then you can set a strength for jump. Just like before, you will have to try different numbers to see which one works best. And now it is important to click the check ground, otherwise the character you will be able to jump when you are in the air, in the middle of the air. And it says here ground tag, ground, so that it is important that we select all the bricks that we created. I'm selecting them with the shift key on my keyboard, and then you click here which says tag and click ground for them. So if we press play now, we should be able to move around, and also we should be able to jump. So we have that basic platformer gameplay in place, which is great. We didn't have to do any programming to get this far. Of course, you have to adjust the jumping and the different speeds, but this is a great starting point. So that is all for this lesson. I will see you in the next lesson for more improvements to our game.